As the 2019 general elections draw nearer, political experts say fake news is on the increase. Now, despite the federal government's campaign against fake news, several incidents have been negatively manipulated, and it's obvious that more people will be misinformed on social media, particularly as more people are armed with their smartphones and the internet. Why has fake news become a norm? What is the best way to stop fake news permanently? We'll be back to clarify these issues and more on Nigeria Today. I am Anne Jibuno. Welcome. In the studio to discuss fake news and its implications is Malam Garba Shehu. He is the Senior Special Assistant to the President, as President Muhammadu Buhari, on media and publicity. Welcome, sir, to Nigeria Today.
Thank you. I appreciate.
Now, before we go into the discussion proper with Malam Garba Shehu, let's see what, or rather, let's listen to what our correspondent Ololade Alayaki came back with. She went out to the streets earlier to ask Nigerians their opinion on the dangers of fake news and suggestions on how it can be stopped permanently in the country.
Fake news does not really educate people, yes, because if they rely on fake news, sometimes they might go astray doing the wrong thing. And fake news as well can incite, can incite people to do something they ought not to do, yes.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of effect, particularly in the social media era, where people just post any news without verification. Now, come to think of it, if you see a fake news that there's an attack on a particular community, in so community, the other community will see it. Without verification, they want to have a reprisal attack, and before you know it. So I think fake news has a lot of bad effect on Nigeria, and if you see a news, you need to verify.
Fake news things is not different from societal and civil living. From experience, as long as there are people, there will be fake news. And the effect in society is that it gives wrong impression of the reality on the ground.
It's good that the government should be telling us the right thing, so that it is good the government should put the citizen, in what is happening in the governance, so that the citizen will know and will be aware, and people will not be going about polluting other people's mind that this is what is happening, and by the time you hear the news, you know that, yeah, this is fake and this one is right. So I think we should stay away from news that are fake.
Advice for me is that they should confirm the source of the news and the genuinity of the news. If the news is really right, if the news is real, they should confirm it before putting any action or going out to do anything about it.
Thanks for staying with us. This is Nigeria Today. We went on the street to hear what Nigerians have to say about fake news. You've listened to their comments. What's your take on what they said?
Well, the problem of fake news is a global phenomenon. I think that it is not an overstatement to say that perhaps it's the greatest evil rocking the entire world, because it's a problem for Europe, for America, for Asia, for all the continents. And nations of the world are battling to see how they can overcome this phenomenon of fake news. It's a very delicate issue because it impinges on the issue of free speech. And free speech is considered as a God-given right. So it's a natural right. Nobody has a right to take it from you. This is why governments all over the world today are in a dilemma over what to do to curtail this menace. But fake news is there, it is real, it is causing problems for everyone around the globe. And and nations of the world are taking various kinds of measures to curtail the situation.
Now you have painted a very gloomy picture about fake news. Let's come back to Nigeria. How much of a problem is it here in Nigeria, and how is it affecting our national interest?
Okay, now usually the platform for the dissemination of fake news is the new media. People who hold handsets or who go on the web or who have computers before them, you know, they find it easy to access the latest news from the devices that are immediately available to them. And it is free. Now, the problem with this online news is that there is no distinction between truth and falsehood. In television like NTA here and the formal mainstream media, before you practice journalism, you go through training and you learn about ethics, and you are taught that this is the right kind of news to tell and this is not, because if it cannot be supported by facts, if it is not supported by evidence, then a journalist who has the training cannot do it. But these days, everyone who holds a handset, if you are on WhatsApp now, you can set up a group, you can broadcast to tens and thousands of people. Perhaps you can have far more reach on WhatsApp as an individual than a television station that is very local. How much of a problem is it to Nigeria? It is used to provide misleading information. I'll give you just the recent example, the latest violent inter-ethnic and inter-religious crisis that rocked Kaduna State, as a consequence of which about 50 innocent people were killed. By sheer coincidence, we have read reports from the Office of the National Security Advisor attributing the losses of life and the crisis arising from the crisis to fake news. The Christian Association of Nigeria in Kaduna State gave an independent opinion of their own, saying that these losses of life came from the dissemination of fake news. So there is a convergence, government, non-government. So that's how big the problem is. Now, you mentioned politics while introducing the program. As elections come before us and we approach them, this country is being deluded with massive amounts of false information and making it increasingly difficult then for the ordinary voter to make rational choices when it comes to the election.
All right, you mentioned something about people dying and all that, you know, in Kaduna. Now, let's talk about fake news regarding we had a recent press release recently linking the NFF president to fake news. What really happened? What's the government's take here?
Well, you know, it's very easy for people to detect fake news a lot of the times because it does not conduce to common sense. President Buhari has been the leader of this country for 3.5 years now. And knowing the way he has run this country, he is a man who is so meticulous when it comes to respect for the rule of law. Certainly, President Buhari is not the kind of person who will say to a judge or to police authority and say, go and arrest this man and lock him up, or go and free that person. So if somebody issues a press release, as they have done in this NFF case now, saying that President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered the arrest and the prosecution of the chairman of the Nigeria Football Federation, we would have left it at that, because, as I said, knowing President Buhari and his manner of respect for the rule of law, you will not give it to him. But because there are people who easily can get misled and who probably don't have given him this much, you know, consideration over time, They could believe those stories. That was why we had to come out and issue that statement. But if there is, breach of the law or criminality by the Nigeria Football Federation, we have investigation agencies, EFCC, ICPC, law enforcement agencies like the police, and the Attorney General of the Federation and all of that. It is in their domain to go and do investigation. And if they find that the leadership is culpable, they certainly don't need to bring President Muhammadu Buhari into it. He himself would not like to be involved. It is in their line of duty to arrest and charge somebody to court. If they get conviction, that's fine. If they don't get, then they go on to other things.
Now, let's take a look at the campaign. There's been a campaign against fake news. The government has been on this campaign. Is it really, what kind of impact has it had, given that fake news is still on the rise?
Well, so if it is on the rise, then really we have a lot more work to do. And, from the early part of the program, I was saying that people are concerned about not breaching the right to free speech, because it's a very sensitive matter.
Yes.
As they say, in the course of training of journalists, that the freedom of speech or of the press is the mother of all freedoms. Because without that freedom, all other freedoms, including the right to life, they will not have any meaning. Because you need freedom of press and of expression in order to defend those other rights. So government chose persuasion. The Nigerian government, advised by the Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, clearly has chosen the path of persuasion. Can we convince stakeholders, all of the owners of the various online platforms, bloggers and news sites owners and all of that, can they reason well and respect the facts? And I want to say that there are some that have raised the standard. They check and cross-check the facts before they publish.
Okay.
But others just rush whatever comes their way. They just push it out, and sometimes it is for a fee. People are paid to publish falsehood.
Now, most times when you talk about fake news, most times people point their fingers at bloggers, like you've mentioned, social media or media platform operators and all that. Are they really the only ones guilty of fake news?
Well, even the mainstream press sometimes gets involved. Nobody denies this. But because of the kind of training that journalists usually acquire before they come to practice in mainstream, they are able to discern most of the time. The tragedy for this country as we speak today is that a lot of our newspapers that you read, they take their lead from the social media. So ironically, it's become a situation in which the tail, as they say, is wagging the dog, which should have been the other way around.
All right, I must stop you here. We need to take this break. When we return, well, we will continue with this conversation. Nigeria Today returns shortly. We're discussing fake news and matters arising.
The Nigerian Television Authority News 24 channel, your dependable all-round news station, offering you world-class news programs, documentaries, spotlights, promos and information highlights. Take advantage of our network reach and advertise your interest, goods and services with us. NTA News 24, first on equals with digital broadcasting. You can reach us on channel 21 terrestrial TV and channel 101 on the Star Times platform. For more inquiries, please call Henry on 0803 379 0884. Join us today.
We're back in the studio with the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Malam Garba Shehu. Now, let's go back to media houses. Before we went on the break, you were talking about mainstream media being guilty of fake news. Now, if a media house gets a press release or gets information, how can you tell if it's from the presidency or the source? How can you tell?
Well, usually institutions like the presidency, they have established channels of communication, of disseminating press releases of their own. And the recipients, media houses, they would usually approach you or write to you, or you reach out to them and they demand their own mailing address. So you have a standard mailing list that you use in sending your own press releases. And a discerning recipient would obviously look at who is the sender. For instance, most organizations would usually nominate one person as the dispatcher of their own online statements, because today we have gotten to, in terms of development, where you no longer wrote a press release on paper and then photocopied and issued. These things are electronically done. And so therefore you grow your mailing list and then you send to them. So if it comes from a source other than the one that you are used to, then you should question that one. And it shouldn't be that you should receive a statement and publish from unknown sources.
Okay. Now, let's look at the raid and subsequent shutdown of Daily Trust newspapers. Does it have anything to do with fake news?
Not so much fake news, but the coloration of the news, maybe the slant. We've been involved in this in the last 24 or so hours, 48 hours. And the military is enraged by the coverage, the type of coverage that the media generally are given to Boko Haram terrorists. We are in a war. An experience all over the world is that in a war situation, you are dealing with an emergency. And newspapers themselves know that you are operating in an unusual environment, and they exercise restraint in national interest. I had the privilege of being a reporter during the first Iraqi war. The Americans who led that coalition did not allow access to everyone, including our own group, to just roam around and take pictures. They limited access to the war front, and they limited access to pictures and information that you can even use. So this is just with regard to Daily Trust. In the particular edition of Sunday yesterday, which I'm sure you have seen, they ran a lead story, the front page, announcing that the Nigerian military was preparing to launch a counter-attack against Boko Haram to seize settlements or towns that Boko Haram had allegedly taken. Now, beyond that, they also announced that the Islamic State in West Africa, ISWA, has embarked on massive recruitment. Now, it is bad enough that you are saying you are disclosing the military plans of your own nation to the enemy, because who will profit from that?
Certainly.
It's Boko Haram commanders will now say, okay, so they are coming. Okay, let's go. So they will pack out and go. Or when you announce that Islamic State in West Africa, ISWA, is recruiting, so are you advertising so that people who with their like minds would go and join? So that's the problem of the military with it. But again, what happened was that, in our view, from the presidency, there were two wrongs. And as the saying goes, two wrongs don't make a right. We came into the picture, and our view was that dialogue should be used to resolve this problem. We don't need strong arm tactics. But the military, as you know them, they probably have gone far ahead in their own plans, and they launched a raid and they seized their offices in Maiduguri, and in happily enough, government spoke to the military, and the military disengaged. And the path of dialogue will be used to resolve the differences between the media organization and the military.
Now, do you think that the right of freedom of expression is being taken for granted, especially with some of these reports that we hear?
Oh, absolutely, there is no doubt about that. I'm not making any claims to be more patriotic than all of the journalists that are out there. I cannot teach them patriotism. But what we are saying is that if we want to really be kind to the nation, you know, all these soldiers in Maiduguri and other places that are fighting, they are being killed so that you and I and all of them, the journalists, will be safe. So they are making the highest sacrifices for the country so that you and all of us will be safe. So if we report in a manner that is so abrasive, so aggressive, in a way that it demoralizes them, they won't fire a shot to defend the nation. And who is the loser? We are all losers.
So how can Nigerians help to stop, or rather help curtail the spread of fake news?
Well, some of the respondents you had aired earlier on had bright ideas as to how these things can be done. The thing is that when you read it, check and cross-check. And obviously, there is also a situation in which everyone will not be saying the same thing. So don't rely on a single channel for your news. When you read this paper or this online platform, go to another one and another one. You will find that in all cases, in most cases, you know, that proverbial saying that the truth will triumph over falsehood will prevail, because they will not, given the diversity of the media, they will not agree that they will publish fake news all at the same time. Somebody will be saying the truth. Don't forget that we are in an era in which if there is an accident in front of the gates here of NTA, before probably you roll out your cameras, a passerby on a motorbike or in a car will have come out, and the first thing they do, tragically, instead of rescuing life, they'll be filming.
Yes.
So these are things that will help to cross-check, you know, falsehood on the part of the media, because a policeman coming to the site to try to distort the facts to favor one against the other,
will be caught.
It's somebody will now say, will err, and it has happened in many instances.
I really must thank you very much, sir, for joining us today, Malam Garba Shehu. We really appreciate your comments today. Thanks a lot. Well, that's all we have time for on Nigeria today. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we've been looking at fake news and its implications on the country. The program, you can watch this program and other editions on our online platform, www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. See you again next time.